please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
But let's get in. Siraj Chaudhary is chairman of Cargill and he joins us to talk about that and various other factors as well. Mr. Chaudhary, hi, thank you so much for joining us. You recently released a report on agriculture in the Asian markets rather. What really has been the outcome of this report and the solutions therein?
Okay, so taking a step back, Manisha, this is a report which Cargill asked the Economic Intelligence Unit to conduct for it, where they interviewed about 400 business leaders. And the goal was really to, this is a large area where the largest increase in population is happening. There's the largest growth in income for, on a relative basis, on a lower base though, is happening. And this is an attempt to really say that, okay, what will this region look like in terms of food and agriculture in, say, 12 years' time, by 2030, for the sake of taking a rounded number. And there were clear findings, and these findings were, I think, everyone has issues on their mind. This was kind of bringing all together to say that, okay, this is what is common to people across the region, or this is what is most common to people across the region, and therefore this is something that economies, the governments, the companies, the various other stakeholders in the food and agriculture space should be focusing on. And it actually threw up 6 key trends, which while in their own, they would have been noticed at different places, but bringing it all together. So the whole idea is to bring it all together, and somewhere there is an appeal or there is a call out to say that this region needs to come together if it has to deal with what is coming at it in the future.
Well, that's a fair point, really, Mr. Chaudhary. But what really have these findings been? And as you said, it really does throw up on what we can expect in agriculture for the next 5 or 10 years in the Asian region. How does India specifically look like?
So we have pockets of excellence. I mean, the examples of different states in India who have collaborated, where the private sector and the government has got together. Actually, it's not really the private sector and the government. It's actually a tripartite relationship, whereas there's a farmer, there's the government and the private sector. And the root cause of this is that historically there has been the farmer-government relationship where the trade or the private sector was not very trusted in dealing with the farmer. I mean, there's always the historical mindset that the farmer will be exploited by the trade or the business, and therefore needed the protection from the government. So the presence of the government in this equation actually raises the level of trust, and therefore more such relationships over a period of time will create as farmers get into create their own farmer producer organizations, they will have more strength to negotiate or to deal with, and more confidence to negotiate and deal with the business. And so I think it's a trend which has started. It will be very crop specific, it will be very demand specific. I mean, will there be a farmer producer or a PPI, private public partnership in producing wheat? Highly unlikely. Or producing corn? Unlikely. Paddy? Unlikely. But then if you get down to, will that be for citrus fruits? Will there be for a particular types of millets? Yes, there is possibility where there is a direct industry and farmer connect for the produce of the farmer.
Siraj, I also want to talk to you about the MSP, because while the announcement, of course, has come in, the implementation is a big question mark. We still are awaiting one final mechanism that the government will adopt in this case. What is your sense when it comes to that?
So, Manisha, I think, while there's a clear motive for the government to increase the MSP, which is a clear signal to the farmer saying that it is our intent that you get a higher realization for your crop. Now, that's a statement of intent. There are practical difficulties in implementing it. You cannot have procurement of all these crops that are covered under MSP at different locations. I do not think there is infrastructure to do that beyond some of the primary crops that have historically been getting procured under the MSP. But I think the problem lies not in trying to give the farmer higher price. I mean, that will not solve the problem. I mean, we have situations where the governments have procured from the farmer at a certain price, and then they sit on that stock and, ultimately sell it at 20-30% lesser price to the public again. So, I mean, we are just sort of recirculating crops and, and subsidies, so to say. So the solution actually is we have to find greater sources of demand. And, you cannot, I mean, pure economics, as we've all studied, is really about prices rise when there is a matching or rising demand against the supply. But today we are sitting in a scenario where there's excess supply of everything. I mean, be it sugar, be it milk, be it crops. And if you do not spur demand, you cannot have sustainable solutions to these problems. So, I mean, and demand is not restricted to saying, okay, we should process more. It is about reaching some of these crops to consumers. It is maybe using some of this produce in more intensive government feeding programs, or finding markets for this outside India. And there are attempts. It's never going to be easy because the world is today grappling with excess supply. I mean, look at the case of sugar or some other commodities. Where do you take your produce? So we do, and this is an outcome of where we have encouraged farmers to produce crops which were probably not needed in that time frame.